Good morning, me muckers! I've not been about for a wee while, but you can see I have got a bit of a Frankenstein set up on this table. Ignore this MPU3 for the minute, that's not actually the subject of the video. This is Black Box. If you're old enough to remember Black Box, you must be older than me, but Black Box was used in the early 80s, very early 80s for Bellfruits games, the likes of Firecracker and Two Step. This one actually comes from one of the last Black Boxes that were out called Superplay. So why have we got it here? Well, I was sent this about 4 months ago, and then the school holidays happened and then stuff happened as well, and I got promoted at work and I didn't get a lot of time to work on this. But I'm getting back into it now, and before I went on holiday actually, I'd rebuilt all this. Changed these sockets, cleaned off a lot of the battery damage, removed this. I've changed the edge connector there. There's a little jump wire on the ROM there because the pin broke. Do have a spare ROM burned as well, but this ROM's still working, so we'll leave it in there. So, the biggest problem I had with this thing was how to power it up and get it working. As you see, I opted for my everything power supply that you see in most of my videos. This spaghetti junction of cables has connections on it for everything from Impact to Scorpion 4. It still does me proud. Not bad for a little 300 watt power supply, but it does the job. So what I ended up doing was I just put 5 volt, 12 volt and through the connector, and then 12 volt here and here for the unsmooth DC for both boards, and fired it up, and yeah, it sort of worked. But I had no outputs and then the board would hang. It would reset. I would see stuff happening on the CPU and both these address selectors, but nothing would happen with the PIA there, the 6821. Nothing would happen with any outputs, nothing was awake. They're like, well, what's going on here? Do I have a board fault? So I double checked all this again. I've replaced these ROM sockets as a matter of course. Reflow solder in some places, checked some other things, and then I twigged. The clue is in the name, unsmooth DC. Put an unsmooth DC in this pin, what it does is you've got a pulsing DC signal. And that actually goes through a bunch of transistors up here, and it's supposed to result on a pulse down here at pin 6 on this 6802 processor. Pin 6 is the NMI pin, non-maskable interrupt for the techies out there. With the setup I had originally, that would just sit high, which is fair enough. You never ping the interrupt. The program goes off and does whatever it does while it's waiting for the interrupt. But nothing with the game actually happens. The reason for that is, whereas your modern stuff does all the timing for reels and lamps and everything by itself, these older things are a little slow for that, so they need a little bit of hardware help to get it right. And what they do with this is, they take this unsmooth DC signal, which is the pulse, send it through a transistor, and it results in a 100 Hz pulse down here. So the game basically running at 100 Hz, which means that the reels are running at a reasonable speed and the lamps are running at a speed you can see them, and yeah, it's, if you like, it's the frame rate of the game. You know, you talk about frame rate with video games and it's interrupt control. It's the same, similar sort of thing with these old things. It's the frame rate of the game. It's how fast things happen that you can see. So what I tried at first was, I tried just tying pin 6 to a select line that was pulsing up here, and the board went fucking nuts. It went gaga. All the outputs were on, yes, but everything was happening far too fast. And I think it was crashing from time to time as well, because I kept seeing the reset pulsing on and off. I thought, well, that's not going to work. Yeah, I've proved the point that I need this pulse going into this pin. You can't just have it sitting flatlining, because it's relying on that C to tell it when to do certain things to the parts of the machine that you can see, and if it doesn't have that, it's just going to sit and wait for it. I actually looked at the code, there's a line that says wait for interrupt. So tying it to there was no good. So I did the math and I realised that on smooth DC, it comes off a pin just after the bridge rectifier and the power supply, which means you're getting a 100 Hz signal up here, goes through this transistor bank up here, and you end up with a 100 Hz pulse down here. So I need a 100 Hz pulse there at that pin. I thought, what have I got that's going to do 100% pulse? Well, I didn't know exactly how fast it was at the time, but I did know that MPU3 did a similar thing. A little 555 timer up here is what they call the multiplex oscillator. It uses a little bit of hardware help to work out the lamp timing, how fast the lamps flash on and off when you're on the features, whatever. You see it there. See, it's not got the standard resistor values in it. I've been experimenting a little bit with those, and I'm also tapped off it here on the output, the 555, and I'm sending that from there through a big jump wire through pin 6. Now, before anybody panics about runaway grounds and stuff, I'm powering both boards from the same power supply, so it's perfectly fine. Everything on the table goes back to the same common ground. I'm not getting grounds fighting each other. I'm not using different power supplies. You get the same 12 volt for here is feeding up to there, and the same ground on both is feeding into there. It's all acting as the one system. But the beauty of it is, because these are so nice and conveniently easy to get to, I could play with the resistor values, and I've moved one off the front and put it on the back so I could fiddle with different values. So I tried it first without changing anything, just linking that to here. Now, I thought that was 100 Hz, but it turns out it's 500 Hz. But it worked. Everything settled down, and I compared the memory map to what I was seeing on here, and everything was working. So I thought, yeah, we're on to a winner here. We're on the right track. So what I've ended up doing is just changing a couple of resistors on there. You see them there. I've changed R68, which you can see in top, and R69 on the bottom. R69 is the key to the puzzle here, because it determines like the length of the pulse, and you need the pulse to be a certain length for everything to work right. You need a long high pulse, and then a short low pulse, long high pulse, short low pulse. Nah, I can't be bothered getting out a piece of paper, by the way. That's why I'm doing it with my finger. You think maybe I've gone a little bit nuts with finger gestures here. No, I'm not being insulting. I'm not trying to give anyone the finger. I'm just showing you, without drawing it. I think that, well, I can do it here basically. So the key to it is long high pulse, short low, long high, short low, long high. Because if you just do a steady square wave like that, with 555 with normal come out with, the interrupt signal goes wrong. If it's long lows and short highs, it goes wrong. You need a short low pulse, and that's why I've got R69 on the bottom, because it's R69 that determines the duty. So I've got R69 on the bottom and R68 on the top. It's R68 that determines the pulse length, the mark space ratio, and I needed that to be as long as possible, so there were just tiny little lows. But let's stop rambling. Proof of the pudding is in the eating. Let's fire it up. Let it start. There we go. Little bumps that get up to something. It doesn't use the UR. And then if we go up here, which is one of the outputs that go off to the sound card, yeah, it's working. It's working on this expansion port over here, and it's doing stuff down there at the PIA. And it wouldn't do that if it wasn't working. That's one of the output ports. So there you go. It is all alive. Output board isn't doing much at the minute, but I don't think it's supposed to, because I think Superplay, most of their track mode is on the sound expansion board. The sound and expansion board has some lamp drives on it as well, and we know from testing that their track mode is mostly on the top glass, which is driven off this expansion card. So, last things to do is change this capacitor and a couple of others there. I know at least one of these is bad. I do know all the front panel lights work. You have to provide front panel light power for these to work. They come off a separate supply line, which is a bit weird, but there you go. Oh, and yeah, I'll get into that another time. But it's all running. Like I said, I did have to put a little extra bit of thing there. That ROM leg broke the minute it took that ROM out, but like I said, I've got it back up there, so yeah, it's all good. And the 5V power supply works as well, we've tested that. So, yeah. I do need to get a hold of a Mega power supply or something with a 12V on smooth line on it, so I don't have to construct that monstrosity. But, yeah. Wee bit of a fun experiment that worked out well. Proved the point with this. I'll explain another time how these NMIs work with determining frame rates and stuff. I've been rambling long enough. And yeah, bye for now. Oh, P.S. It's just another note before I sign off. When you power the front panel lights, this becomes the ground for the front panel lights. So you have to have a clip lead or something on here to ground for any of these to light up. But I did test that earlier, they're all working. I'm not going to mess with this rig at the minute because I need to put this back together and then get on with the next thing, which is stopping me doing work to this to actually get this going. Otherwise you can see the 5V works fine because, but yeah, bye bye for now.